Okay, now one of the things you have to decide when you're buying a drill press, you have to decide exactly what type of drill press you have. Now this drill press that I have here, this is a tall one. As you can see, it goes from the top, and it has a stand that goes all the way down to the floor. Now this is a floor model drill press. This is designed with a base and everything down below. I'm going to actually show this to you. This actually has a steel base and everything on the floor here. And also it has mounting points and things. If you want to mount bolts and things to mount it to the floor, it's got those as well. Now, okay, that's the base, and then you're going to come on up here, and then when you come up here, you're going to come up to the actual drill press table itself. Now, one of the things you can keep in mind is this drill press, as you can see, actually goes all the way to the floor. This is about where I am, so you can see in the pictures that this drill press is almost as tall as I am. Now, keep in mind when you're buying drill presses, you can get different types of drill presses. You can get ones that are called benchtop drill presses that actually go on top of your benchtop that are shorter than this, than what you have here. I had room in my shop, so I was able to go ahead and buy a drill press like this one you see here. Okay, now I'm also going to go ahead and show you some of the features and things that it has as well also. Now, if you're curious to know how much I paid for this drill press has actually been a member of my family probably close to 15, 20 years now. I've had this drill press for a long time, and it's been very reliable. It's a Sears Craftsman, and I haven't had any problems at all with it since the day I bought it. Okay, now one of the things to keep in mind when you're buying a drill press, one of the things to determine what I was saying about the cost is when I bought this drill press, this is about $500 when I bought this drill press. Now that was quite a while ago. Drill press prices vary depending on the type of models, speeds, and power and things like that you need. This is more or less just your basic drill press, but I think you get a pretty good idea if you're looking to get a drill press what sort of things you might want to keep in mind when you're buying one. Okay, now the first thing to keep in mind is, do you have the room for a stand-up drill press like this, or do you want to have one on your desktop? Some people don't have enough space for a drill press like this, so they elect for a what's called a benchtop drill press. Now, a benchtop drill press, what that is it's a drill press like this, but basically right from here on, it would just be a stand. That actual stand that you see here would be up around here, and it would be a lot shorter. And that way you could mount it on top of a bench top if you want to do drilling and things like that, versus having a full-size stand like this one has. Now, one of the things that's going to determine the price of the drill press that you buy is exactly the materials and things that the drill press is made of can be a big factor in determining how much it costs. Now, when I bought this drill press back in the day, this is actually made out of cast iron. This is actually very, very heavy-duty drill press down here as far as the mounting and everything goes that this is mounted onto. That stand alone on the bottom weighs about 45, 50 pounds, just the stand alone that that's actually sitting on. Okay, now the next thing that's going to determine the value of the price is going to be, one of the things you want to keep in mind is how wide is the actual work space that you actually have to work on. Now you can see on this drill press right here, I have a pretty good sized table here to work with. To put it in relation to you, this is my hand here. So basically I have about 2 hands worth of space side to side and about 2 hands worth of space forward to back. Now, the size of the stand that you're actually using, the actual drill press surface that you're actually using, it's going to vary from drill press to drill press. Some are going to be larger. Some might be a little bit smaller than that. But there's other things to keep in mind, too, when you're looking at this. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you have to determine when you're buying a drill press what you're actually going to be using that drill press for. Now, I needed to go ahead and be able to do metals and things like that, to be able to drill metal and things like that. Now, one of the things that was very important to me was I had to make sure that the table had mounting brackets, areas and things where I could basically mount things like this vise right here that I actually have. Now, I don't actually have it on the table right now, but what this does is this actually sits on the table, and there's bolts that actually go down through here, and then the bolts go down through here, and basically that mounts that vise onto the drill press. That way it doesn't move when you're drilling metal and things like that. Now, that's something to keep in mind. Different drill presses will have different qualities as far as the table goes. Now, another thing too that I really liked about this drill press is the fact that it had a catch bins on the side. It actually had these are like little catch channels on the side for your debris and things. That was another thing that made this table really nice, is the fact that it had those. Okay. Now, the other thing that's going to determine, you have to determine too, is you have to determine what sort of things will the table actually do. Now, on my table on my drill press, this actually has a bar in the back of it. You can actually crank this up with this little bar right here. I can actually crank this up here, and it's got a ratchet system built into it. with the gear and everything in here. As you can see here, there's a gear system, and you can actually use this to raise and lower the stand based on where you want it, okay? And now the other thing too is you can see the distance of travel that you have. Basically, you can have the stand all the way up here, or you can have all the way almost down to the floor where my fingers. So you see there's a lot of room for travel there. That's a really handy thing to have depending on the size things that you're trying to drill. It's always better if you can get a drill press table like this with more room for movement, up and down depending on what you're using. It helps out if you have awkward items and things that you have to drill. By having that extra leeway and things like that, that's one of the things that's really nice when you're picking out a drill press. So just keep that in mind, that the type of table that you have, just like this right here, the actual drilling surface also doesn't have, it's going to determine how much it costs. Also, the materials that it's made of and the size is one of the things that's going to determine how much it costs. Now, at the time when I bought this, this is basically this is one of their top of the line drill presses when I bought this back in the day, and that's one of the reasons why it cost a little bit more than most of them would, because of the fact the materials and things that it was made of were pretty good quality back in the day. Now, the next thing you're going to have to determine is you're going to have to determine the size of chuck and things that you're going to be using. Now, depending on the size drills that you have, this actually has a system in here. You can actually take this chuck off and put a different chuck on. And what that is this determines how big a drill bits and things you can use in here. What it is there's jaws in here, and they actually open up. And the wider they open, the larger bits and things you can use. And that's where this is going to determine. The type of chuck that you have is going to also determine, in some cases, the cost of the drill press. Generally, the wider the chuck you have, the more things you can hold, the more costly it's going to be. And keep in mind, this drill press also, you can take this chuck off and replace it with other ones as well if you need ones that are larger. This actually gives you the option of doing that on this drill press here. Now, the other thing to keep in mind too is when you look at the drill press, you're going to want to determine what sort of handles does it have to make the drill press go up and down. Now, as you can see on this one, I actually have a handle on here. When I want to lift it up and down, I actually turn this like this, and what that does is that's what brings the drill up and down depending on what you're drilling. And that's another thing too to keep in mind. Different types of drill presses will have different qualities as far as this goes as well. Different types of materials. Now, this is a really good heavy-duty quality one, and that's one of the reasons this has lasted. But the other thing, too, is you're going to notice that the distance of travel that you have here also may be a factor in determining how much the drill press costs, and that's something you want to keep in mind as well. The distance of travel that you have here is also important. Why is that important? Because if you have more travel, it gives you more options when you're drilling things, so you don't have to move the table so much. So that's something to keep in mind when you're picking one of these out as well. Now, another thing, too, to keep in mind is, does the drill press have a locking feature? Now, what this does is there's a little gauge right here. As you can see, there's little numbers in here. What I can do is I can actually set this to a certain depth I want, and then I can actually lock this in. And what it will do is when the drill press goes down, basically when it comes down, it will stop wherever I set it. So, for example, let's give you a good example, okay? Okay, now I'm going to say on here that, let's say, for example, I'll just give you an idea. I want to preset a hole, okay? I'm going to adjust the hole that I want. Then I'm going to tighten this down. Now, what's going to happen is when I pull this down, you're going to notice that the drill press goes down, but then it stops, okay? Now, as you can see, it's going to stop there, and what that does is there's a little thing on there that stops it from moving. That way you don't go too deep when you have a project. And now the thing that's nice about that is, okay, let me tighten this back down. I want to show you what was nice about that option. Okay. Okay, what's nice about that option is by having a drill press like this, where you can actually set the gauge and depth and things, when you're drilling projects and things, you can determine that the holes are all exactly the same thickness if you're trying to do things like make channels and things like that, or if you're trying to do countersinks. By having that, it means that each time I go like this, it stops it automatically. Each time I go like this, as you can see here, it won't let it go past that point because I have a screw here that I can set and I can adjust. Now, that's another option to have on a drill press. I don't know if all the drill presses have it, but this feature right here has been very, very handy for me to have, and it's one of the reasons that I really like this too. As far as this drill press goes. Now, the next thing you're going to have to determine is you're going to have to determine how powerful the drill press is. Now, as you can see, what we're looking at here, this is a Sears Craftsman 1 horsepower 5/8 inch chuck 12-speed drill press. Speed range is 2,500 to 3,100 RPMs. Now, The thing to keep in mind is different drill presses are going to have different horsepower ratings depending on what you're buying. Now, of course, the more powerful the drill press, the more money you're going to have to pay for it depending on how powerful it is. And that's determined by the motor in the back here. This is one of the things you have to determine on the back here is how much power do you have to have back here depending on what you're doing. Now, the only thing about it is if you have a motor like this has been very good for all my needs. I haven't had any trouble at all with this drill press, but depending on what you're drilling, you may need a drill press that's more powerful depending on what you're going through. Now, I'm used this mostly for metals and woods and things, so I haven't had any real problems with needing more power on the drill, but that's one of the things to keep in mind. Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind when you're selecting out a drill press. If you're going to notice on top here, you notice how it says how it's got speed ranges. The reason why this speed range right here, where it says speed range, is important. Different drill bits and things might require you to run them at certain speeds, not exceeding a certain RPM. That's where this actually comes in handy here, the speed range. Now, if you're asking how do you set the speeds on the drill press, I'm going to show you that next. On the top of the drill press, there's an actual cover here that I actually lift up. Okay, let me lift this up for you. Okay. Now, what you have when you lift that cover up on the inside, you got to notice there's a set of pulleys. Okay. You notice there's a set of pulleys here. There's a set of pulleys here, and then there's another set of pulleys here. Okay. Now, what determines the speed is basically where you set these belts. Depending on the size pulley that you use. For example, you can use any one of these 4 pulleys on this one. You can use any one of these 3 pulleys on this one, as you can see, or you can use any one of the pulleys on this one here. What that determines is, depending where the belt's at, that determines how fast it goes. And there's a little thing on the back here when you need to set the speed. There's a little bar in here that you loosen. What that does is it loosens up this pulley, and then the whole assembly system. Then you can actually take these belts and move these belts up and down on these different pulleys, depending on the speed that you want to have. And as you can see, there's multiple pulleys here on all these different things. And then what they do is, on the inside of the drill press, okay, let me see if I can focus in on it. On the inside of the drill press, as you can see here, see where it says spindle speeds? That determines where the belt's going to be at on those pulleys that I just showed you. That's what determines your speeds. That's how you set your different speeds. Okay. Now you're also going to notice, in addition to that, when you have to set your speeds, there's also a thing that says recommended on here. It says recommended speeds. Recommended speeds for drill sizes. What that means is these are different things that they give you to suggest what speed you should be using for the material that you're using. Now, this is another thing that you have to determine. How many speeds the drill press has is one of the things that's going to determine how much it costs. My advice is, when you're getting a drill press, if you can get a drill press with more speeds, the better. Now, I haven't had a need on my drill press to really do a lot of adjustments to the speed and things, because I found that the one setting I have works pretty well. But it's always nice to have the ability to be able to change these speeds depending on what you're working with. It just gives you a little bit more versatility in your workshop. Okay, we'll close this up. Okay. So now you kind of get an idea of what's involved in the drill press. Now, the one other thing I was going to point out to you before we're done too, one of the things to keep in mind too when you're buying a drill press, and I showed you how everything was put together. You want to also check and see if like the construction, like where the switch is. Now, this actually has an option in here. If you see here, you can see where it says light. This actually has a light I can actually turn on, which is a nice feature. I don't know if all the drill presses have it, but what they do is there's a light in here. What it does is, underneath the drill press table in here, I'll see if I can show that to you. Underneath the drill press table, there's an actual cavity here where there's a light bulb that shines down onto your workspace. Okay, and that's one of the things that's really nice. Having a light switch is something that's really nice on here as well. Now, you also got to notice too that on here too that this has an on-off switch. Okay, now another thing to keep in mind is, one of the safety things to keep in mind when you have a drill press, you see where it says pull out, where it says pull out to lock? What that is that's so if you have a kid in the house and you want to turn the drill press off, this is like a little key. With this on, I can turn the drill press on or off. Okay? Now, if I take this little key out, what that means is, it means now it won't turn on, because this is essentially like a little safety lock that they have. This is a good thing to have if you have kids in the house and you want to make sure you lock your drill press out so nobody can use it. That's where this little key here comes in handy. Okay? Then when you want to use it, you just put the key back in. Okay? And now you're ready to go. Okay, now the only other thing I wanted to show you on here is, I wanted to go ahead and show you that another helpful suggestion that I have. When you buy a drill press, if you have a chuck key, there's the actual chuck key. This is the actual chuck key. And what this does is, this actually goes into the spindle, and this is how you actually go about adjusting the width and everything to put your drill bit in. My advice is, if you have a chuck key, go ahead and mount a little chain on it like this, and then have it laying down on the drill press just like this, like I have here. Okay. Now the advantage of that is, when you do this, then when you put this down, this doesn't fall on the floor every time, and then you don't have to worry about picking it up. It's right where it needs to be all the time. Okay. So I hope that this video was helpful to you in helping you decide on what type of drill press that you might decide you want to get for your workshop. And I always want to thank you again, by the way, for tuning into the Kurt's Place channel. And I also want to mention, if you want to go ahead on my channel, go ahead and click that little bell icon. There's a little bell icon on the bottom of the screen. When you see the page of the video running, there's a little bell icon. Click that bell icon, and that'll keep you up to date. As soon as the video comes out, you'll be informed right away when the video comes out. Okay? And I want to thank you again for tuning into the Kurt's Place channel, and I hope they all have a really great day. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye now.